Welcome back to The Ghost of Change, Episode 2. So where are we? Looks like we're sailing over Manhattan by moonlight. Well, we're still in Brooklyn, I promise you. Now, what should this one be about? I think something romantic this time. Stella by Starlight. Remember that song? Ah, you're probably too young. Something romantic, but what? What? Oh, I don't know. Anybody have any ideas out there? You want to throw me a suggestion? Well, let's see. Romantic, but something in my studio. Something small. Something maybe useful. I don't know. What's this? Buttons? 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 Buttons will put them to sleep. Buttons will put them to sleep. Remember that?
Are the stars up tonight? I don't know if it's cloudy or bright, 'cause I only have eyes for you, dear. The moon may be high, but I can't see a thing in the sky, 'cause I only have eyes for you. I don't know if we're in a garden or on a crowded avenue. You are here, so am I. Maybe millions of people go by, but they all disappear from view. And I only have eyes for you.
The stars out tonight. I don't know if it's cloudy or bright, 'cause I only have eyes for you, my dear. The moon may be high, but I can't see a thing in the sky, 'cause I only have eyes for you. I don't know if we're in a garden or on a crowded avenue. You are here, so am I. Maybe millions of people go by, but they all disappear from you. And I only have eyes for you.
I don't know if we're in a garden or on a crowded avenue. You are here, so am I. Maybe millions of people go by, but they all disappear from view. And I only have eyes for
I name this pub the Lambeth Walk.
There you go, do you? Your Lambeth way, any evening, any day, you'll find them all doing the Lambeth Walk. Hey! Every little Lambeth gal takes along her Lambeth gal. You'll find them all doing the Lambeth Walk. Hey!
Pearly is of course inspired by the British Pearly kings and queens. Who are they? Well, the Pearlies are a sort of subculture British royalty, a monarchy from the same world of costermongers and street sellers that I spoke of in the last video. The same world where fish sellers rubbed elbows with puppet shows, the streets of London. It all started in 19th century Victorian London when an orphan street sweeper and rat catcher named Henry Croft was taken under the wings of the costermongers of Spitalfields Market. Croft learned their trade and their way of life, and how as a community they acted as caretakers for the poor. They were also known for the mother-of-pearl buttons sewn onto the seams of their tattered clothes in an attempt to imitate the jeweled fashions of the wealthy. As legend goes, Henry was wandering along the mud banks of the Thames one day when he came across the shipwrecked cargo of a sunken Japanese boat and thousands of imported pearl buttons. Inspired by his local heroes, Henry covered an entire suit and hat with 60,000 pearl buttons, sewing them on in patterns that spelled out slogans like, "All for charity and pity the poor." Thus started Henry's dedication to collecting money for charities and orphanages such as the one he grew up in. His beautiful pearl-covered suit helped draw attention. He became a well-known character, and by 1911, a Pearly Society was formed. Soon every borough in London had its own Pearly king and queen representatives. This tradition of charity from working-class culture in London continues to this day. Bravo, and hats off to Mr. Henry Croft and the charming kindness of the many, many members of this wonderful monarchy. Pearly is also based on Pedrolino, the 16th century character from the Commedia dell'arte, whose name means Little Pete. He's probably the most recognizable personality from the Commedia due to his transformation by the French into Pierrot, a naive with a melancholy personality, always pining over unrequited love. This transformation began with Jean-Gaspard Devereux, who came to embody the role in the early 19th century at Le Théâtre des Funambules, the theater of the tightrope walkers, on the Boulevard of Crime in Paris. Devereux was beloved by the high and the low, the poets and culturati, to the working class, children of paradise, who would sit in the cheapest seats at the top of the theater, known as the gods. Devereux's life reads much like the tragic comedy he performed. I've been showing you pictures of his son, Charles Devereux, who carried on the family tradition. It's a long tradition that continues today. Charlie Chaplin got his start in British vaudeville as a Pierrot, and shades of this personality are clearly evident in The Little Tramp. The great comics of silent film all owe a debt to the Commedia and Pierrot in particular. But back to Debarrau. Let me introduce you to a film somewhat based on his life. It's one of the greatest films ever made. It's Les Enfants du Paradis, Children of Paradise. I saw this at the age of 14 and it changed my life. It really did. And it's my honor now to recommend it to all of you. If you're interested in anything I have to share with you here in these videos, do see this magnificent film. It was made in Paris in 1945 by director Marcel Carnet and screenwriter Jacques Prévert during the occupation. The stories of how this film came to be are almost as remarkable as the film itself. Members of the resistance worked on it. The set designer, who was Jewish, hid his identity. Upon completion, the film itself was hidden in 3 different locations to preserve it until after liberation. The drama is all there, and the story, the sets, costumes, and performances transcended magic. And I truly could dedicate an entire video to just the influence of this masterpiece alone on my work and my perspective on art and life. And within this masterpiece is the astonishing performance of Jean-Louis Barrault as Baptiste, the Pierrot at the center of the story. There is no more beautiful example of what this character became through its hundreds of years of translation than this exquisite performance, its sheer poetry. The influence of Pierrot among poets, writers, painters, composers, and philosophers is so vast, it would take hours just to begin. But I will end with just this additional example. Another film I highly recommend, this time by the avant-garde filmmaker Kenneth Anger. The film is Rabbit's Moon, and it was originally filmed, again in Paris, in 1950, and here again are some of the stock elements of the classic Pierrot, but now shown through the lens of this remarkable artist who himself once played the changeling in the 1935 Max Reinhardt version of A Midsummer Night's Dream. Clearly touched by the magic of the old theater from childhood, he contributed to the old conversation. My Pearly, my Pierrot, is just one word, one sentence, one gesture in this illustrious paradise. So here's what Pearly is made from. Mother of pearl, buttons. One shape, 3 sizes, and blue silk. He's a minimalist kind of guy. These buttons all came from Artie Alexander's hardware store, which was a salvage emporium in Lower Manhattan. It's gone now, but it was this extraordinary warehouse, 4 floors, 4,000 square feet each, plus this full basement of treasure, this type of treasure that Artie's father had collected off the freighters when there was an insurance claim, and he piled these things up in this place. It was just a place out of time. And I spent many hours there, and I will be speaking more about this amazing place and about Artie, who was an amazing gent, in future episodes, because it was at Artie's that I found the inspiration to do so much of my work. These buttons are all seconds. They all have flaws, and it's actually the flaws that I find particularly enchanting. Pearly is made out of buttons with flaws, with imperfections. I think that's special, and it shows the nature of the actual shell that this came out of. There's a link, there's something very true and genuine about them. But that's true with mother of pearl in general. Old mother of pearl is like something very alive, and I'm going to show you more examples now of this wonderful material. So let's go take a look at those. So here we have a collection of mother of pearl buttons. And just to back up a bit, I thought it would be good for me to just put in a word for the history of buttons. They date back to about 3000 BC, and the first buttons that were really used for clothing to about the 12th century. Isn't that just, I find those kinds of dates amazing. Buttons were made out of organic materials, bone, wood, shell buttons. These are all 19th and early 20th century buttons. And these are mostly what I'm showing you here are carved buttons. Now, the process of making a button meant that you took the shell and you used what's called a die, and the die would cut the shapes, the circles. Look at this one. Oh, isn't that beautiful? This is an old button. Isn't that simply gorgeous? Then someone else would do the carving, and then someone else would do the polishing. Some of the carving got very elaborate. Look at this extraordinary bit of, I hope that I'm aiming it so that the iridescence can get picked up. Some of these buttons have a dark quality. People refer to that as smoky mother of pearl. And I think it's from a different type of shell, a different part of the shell. Some of these are shank buttons, meaning that there's the top part, and instead of it being the holes through the middle, you have a back. This is an old one because it has a metal shank attached to it. That shows you that this is very old. This is 19th century. Some of them are so tiny. Look at this beautiful thing. Oh my gosh. Can you see it? Oh, I'll hold it here. This is from a baby dress or christening outfit. And the wonderful thing about it is that it's got tiny little cuts all around the circumference of the button. The wonderful thing about them is to try to find sets if you can. Here is a set of these lovely, lovely things. I have more of them, but I brought 3 of them out to show you. And isn't that wonderful? There's one of those imperfections that I talk about. But you can see that these are hand cut. Even the squares are imperfect. It's the imperfections or the perfection in these things. And look at this. Oh, I love when I find them this way, with a little bit of whatever they came from still attached. This is a polka dot dress. Anyway, the dress part I'm suggesting is probably where it came from, but it's definitely polka dots. And look at this beauty. My heavens, look at that. Oh my gosh. Isn't that just amazing? Look at this beautiful, beautiful thing. Ugh. It just feels like it's speaking to me. Anyway, this gives you a sense of the range of carved mother of pearl buttons. I also wanted to show you a few other things. Sometimes, the dearest way to find them is on a button string, and this is how grandmas would save their buttons. This one's been through the wars. It's been washed many times. The thing about mother of pearl buttons is you don't want to wash them with soap and water. It will take the iridescence off. But this one has been through many washings, a button like that, many washings. But look at all these lovely things. These are those little baby buttons, those little tiny deer buttons. You'd see these on women's bodices too. And maybe I'll do an episode in the future about clothing construction that talks about how many buttons would be used on a garment of greater value because it indicated that that person had money. They had someone there to take those buttons and open and close them for them. Here's the way you would buy buttons back in the day. These are button cards. Those are the super pearl. And this is the way someone who wanted to make what they would call a waist, a little blouse, they would buy them this way. Here's something else I wanted to show you. This is a button card that was made by someone out of their own buttons, their leftover buttons. And this was a common thing that people used to do. They would make these little pictures, these little works of art. And if Michael will bring the camera in close, you might be able to see the detail in some of these wonderful little marvels, these little works of art, just to keep your shirt closed. So, Michael and I filmed a whole lot of other buttons. We did metal buttons and the earliest plastic buttons and glass mourning buttons. We did all kinds of buttons. And then we realized, oh my goodness, this is getting too long. So we will have those in a separate video just about buttons. So look for that. And in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Ghost of Change. We really hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you'll come back again for future episodes. Goodbye now. Bye.